Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're unpacking something truly monumental, the global video game market. We've got a fantastic stack of sources for you, mainly data insights across regions, countries, from cognitive market research. Our mission for this deep dive is really to cut through the noise, show you the true scale of this multi-billion-dollar industry. Not just its current size, but where it's headed, and, importantly, why it matters to more than just gamers. We'll definitely uncover some surprising shifts and trends. So the big question sort of hanging over this deep dive is, will the gaming world's balance of power truly shift, from west to east in the coming decade? Or will the established markets find maybe surprising new ways to innovate and keep their hold? Let's unpack this.
Indeed. And we'll be looking at how this market hasn't just grown, it's fundamentally transformed. Exploring the forces, the real drivers behind its expansion across different parts of the world. It's an industry that's often underestimated, I think, and the data paints a very, very compelling picture.
Yeah, compelling is the word. When we talk about massive, we're not just throwing around adjectives here.
Yeah.
Consider this. Back in 2021, the global video game market pulled in over, $156 billion globally. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. That number is projected to basically skyrocket. We're talking over $245 billion by 2025. And then, get this, a staggering $604 billion by 2033.
Wow.
Yeah. That's nearly a five-fold increase in just 12 years. It's growing at a consistent annual rate, a CAGR, of almost 12%. 11.92% to be exact.
What's truly striking there isn't just the sheer scale of those numbers, though they are huge. It's the sustained double-digit growth year after year. If you put that in perspective, we're talking about a profound global integration of gaming into mainstream entertainment, into culture. It's going far beyond what many might imagine, becoming as ubiquitous as, say, streaming movies or social media.
Right, so that's the global pie, and it's expanding rapidly. But who's eating the biggest slices? And, maybe more importantly, where are the most explosive growth opportunities popping up? Let's zoom in on the regions. Okay, so our sources clearly show the Asia-Pacific region, APAC, is the absolute powerhouse right now, and it's set to really solidify that lead. In 2021, APAC generated over $58 billion in sales revenue. $58 billion, but listen to this. By 2033, that's projected to leap to an astonishing $237.5 billion, maintaining an impressive annual growth rate, that CAGR again, of over 12.5%. And within Asia-Pacific, China is just dominating.
Yeah.
Absolutely dominating. Went from over $21 billion in 2021 and is projected to cross $91 billion by 2033. That's with one of the highest growth rates globally, over 13% CAGR.
Incredible.
Yeah. And India is also a huge story here. It's set to grow from just over $10 billion to over $44 billion. It's a similar high growth rate, too. Even Japan, a long-established gaming giant, it's projected to grow substantially from around $7 billion to nearly $27 billion.
This kind of explosive expansion in Asia-Pacific, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the specific drivers propelling these highly populated regions forward so quickly? If we connect this to the bigger picture, a lot of it seems fueled by mobile-first adoption. Mobile gaming just lowers the barrier to entry for millions.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah, combine that with rapidly expanding digital infrastructures like 5G becoming more common, and add in a deeply ingrained social gaming culture, especially in places like China and India. We have the perfect storm for growth. It isn't just about more players. It's really about new ways of playing, new ways of monetizing that are reshaping the whole global market.
Okay, so while we've seen that incredible explosive growth in Asia, it's worth remembering that, the traditional titans of the industry still reside elsewhere. Let's shift our focus over to North America, traditionally a dominant force. This region pulled in over $40 billion in 2021, $40 billion, and it's estimated to hit over $145 billion by 2033. Still very strong growth, a solid annual rate over 11%.
So massive, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The United States alone accounted for the lion's share of that, something like $31 billion in 2021. That's projected to reach over $111 billion by 2033. And Canada and Mexico also show strong individual growth trajectories. Canada heading towards maybe $19.5 billion, Mexico towards $14 billion by 2033.
What's fascinating here, I think, is how North America, while clearly still a dominant force, shows a slightly lower growth rate, that CAGR, compared to Asia Pacific. Now, this isn't necessarily a sign of decline, not at all. It's more indicative of a more mature market. It does raise an important question, though. Is it reaching a point of market saturation, where there are fewer entirely new players to bring into the fold? Or perhaps is it shifting its growth model, maybe towards deeper engagement, things like subscription models, higher spending per player within an existing, very dedicated user base? It's just a different kind of growth story over there.
A different dynamic. Okay, so from the Americas, let's cross the Atlantic. Let's talk Europe. This region is another major player, no doubt. Revenues were around $33.6 billion back in 2021 and climbing to over $124.5 billion projected by 2033. That's a healthy 11.7% annual growth rate. And it's a really interesting mosaic, diverse markets within that overall growth story. Take Germany, for instance. It shows really strong growth, projected to basically quadruple its market size from almost $6 billion to over $23 billion by 2033.
Impressive.
Yeah, really strong. Meanwhile, the UK is also robust, projected to reach nearly $13.7 billion. But interestingly, some countries, like Italy, they have a slightly lower growth rate forecast, around 10.3%, expanding from roughly $2 billion to about $6.6 billion. While the rest of Europe category, grouping smaller markets, actually shows a very impressive growth rate, almost 12.7%, indicating really dynamic expansion across maybe smaller individual countries.
Yeah.
So it's a region with established players, but also a lot of varied, quite localized growth happening. Right now, let's cast our gaze south, South America. This is a market that seems poised for pretty significant expansion. It grew from nearly $9 billion in 2021 to a projected $41 billion by 2033. That boasts a healthy annual growth rate, too, over 12%. So strong growth, and Brazil is absolutely leading the charge there, set to grow from just over $3 billion to almost $14.5 billion.
Wow. Yeah. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, these regions like South America, they represent significant untapped potential. Still, Brazil's strong growth, for example, it really points to a rapidly expanding consumer base. You've got increasing access to smartphones, more reliable internet, and crucially, growing disposable income for entertainment. It feels like a market that's less about saturation and much more about the fundamental expansion of access and opportunity for people to get into gaming.
Yeah, access is key. And continuing that theme of emerging potential, let's look at the Middle East and Africa, MEA. The Middle East expanded from over $8 billion in 2021 to a projected $28.4 billion by 2033. That's got a substantial annual growth rate, over 10.5%. Still a big leap. Saudi Arabia and Turkey are clearly significant contributors there, driving a lot of that. And then in Africa, we see a tremendous surge forecasted, from over $7 billion to nearly $28 billion by 2033.
Wow, almost quadrupling, too.
Exactly, with Nigeria and South Africa really leading the way on the continent.
What's particularly fascinating here, I find, is that while the Middle East shows the lowest regional CAGR, that growth rate, among the ones we've detailed, it still represents a tripling, more than a tripling of its market size by 2033.
Still huge growth in absolute terms.
Exactly. It really highlights the diverse pathways to growth we're seeing globally. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all model. In some regions, growth might be driven by sheer population size and mobile adoption, like we saw in parts of Asia. In others, it's maybe more about infrastructure development catching up. And then in places like the Middle East, it might be unique cultural factors, rising tech adoption overall, plus significant government investment in digital entertainment. It really challenges our assumptions about what drives a gaming market forward.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? From our deep dive into these sources, into this data, it's crystal clear. The global video game market isn't just big. It's a rapidly expanding, incredibly dynamic universe.
Yeah.
Okay. It's fundamentally reshaping economies, reshaping entertainment worldwide.
Yeah.
And maybe crucially, it seems to be shifting the center of gravity, perhaps, from the established giants of North America and parts of Europe towards these explosive growth centers in Asia-Pacific and also South America and Africa.
Yeah, this consistent, really robust growth, especially in what we once maybe considered emerging regions, it truly challenges our assumptions, our old assumptions about where the next wave of innovation, the next market leadership will emerge from. It compels us, I think, to consider not just the financial aspects, the billions of dollars, but also the immense cultural and technological implications of this whole global phenomenon. It leaves you wondering, for instance, what new forms of gaming, maybe things entirely unique to those diverse, rapidly expanding markets, what might arise from there that fundamentally changes how all of us play in the coming decade? It's kind of funny when you think about it. So many of us grew up playing video games, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe nowadays it's your friends, your kids, maybe even your parents glued to a screen. But how much has that whole world actually changed? It feels like it's transformed almost overnight. So today we're doing a deep dive into the global video game market. And believe me, it's an industry that's way more complex and honestly more influential than most people probably realize. Our main source for this is a really fascinating report from Cognitive Market Research. And our mission basically is to unpack what's going on. We want to look at the big trends, the challenges, and even how things like geopolitics are shaking up this incredibly fast-moving sector. You might be surprised by what we find. Okay, so let's dig in. When you look at just how huge the video game market is now, it's pretty mind-blowing. What's really pushing this massive growth? The report highlights some key drivers, and I guess we should start with, well, who's actually playing these games?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. What's really striking is how much the gaming demographic has grown and diversified. It's definitely not just teenagers in their parents' basements anymore.
Right.
We're seeing gamers across basically all generations. Kids, sure, but also adults, even grandparents. And there's been a huge increase in women playing and older folks getting into it. This broadening of the market is, well, it's immense. It forces developers to think differently about stories, about accessibility, even just how the controls work. The industry had to catch up.
That's a massive shift just in who is playing. But okay, beyond the players, the report also talks a lot about how we're playing and what we're playing. Technology seems key here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just think about the leap with next-gen consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
And you've got VR and AR, virtual and augmented reality becoming more capable, kind of blurring the lines between the digital world and our physical one.
And cloud gaming too, right?
Exactly. Cloud gaming is a big one. Plus, innovations like AI driving game mechanics.
AI. How does that work in games?
Well, think about non-player characters, NPCs. AI makes them react more realistically, more dynamically. It all adds up to making the gameplay feel way more real and engaging.
Okay, so you've got more people playing, better tech, making games more immersive. So how are companies actually making money from all this increased engagement? What's the business model side look like?
Yeah, that raises a really important point about how the whole market actually sustains itself. And the answer is a real proliferation of monetization models. It's not just buying a game box anymore. We're seeing huge success with subscription services, like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Game Pass.
Right, the Netflix model for games.
Sort of, yeah. And then you have microtransactions everywhere, those little in-game purchases for cosmetics or items. Plus, the massive popularity of free-to-play games, which rely entirely on those other models. The interesting thing here isn't just that they make money this way, but how it changes what a game is. It's less a one-off product, more like an ongoing service, or even part of your digital identity. It completely shifts what consumers expect.
So the market's booming, tax racing ahead, but it can't all be smooth sailing. No industry grows this fast without hitting some bumps. What are some of the big challenges, the restraints that the video game market is grappling with, according to the research?
Well, one major hurdle that jumps out immediately is just the sheer cost of making games these days, especially the big ones, the AAA
It
titles.
says blockbuster game.
Exactly. Budgets for those now often go way past $100 million, sometimes, 200, 300 million, even more.
Wow.
Yeah, and that puts enormous financial pressure on the studios and their investors. Every big launch becomes this incredibly high-stakes gamble. You have to wonder how that pressure affects creativity, right?
Yeah.
Are they less willing to take risks?
That's a staggering amount of money. What about pressures from outside the industry like regulations? We hear more about that now.
Definitely. Governments around the world are looking much more closely at the industry, especially at controversial things like loot boxes.
Yeah, the randomized item things.
Right. Critics argue they're basically gambling, and there's a lot of concern about their impact, especially on kids and teenagers. So regulations are tightening up around those, around potentially addictive game mechanics, even screen time limits in some places. And this directly hits how games are designed and, critically, how they make money. Developers are being forced to adapt their core business models.
Okay, and another thing, platform fragmentation. It feels like you need 50 different accounts and launchers just to play your game sometimes. Is that a real constraint?
It absolutely is. Issues around which platform a game is on, compatibility problems,
Right.
they create real barriers. Think about console exclusives or just how complicated and expensive it is for a developer to make a game work well on PC and PlayStation and Xbox and Switch.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. And it limits who can actually play the game. For developers, it restricts their market reach. So yeah, it's that double-edged sword. Competition between platforms drives innovation, which is good, but it also creates these silos, these walled gardens.
Okay, so beyond the current drivers and these roadblocks, the report also points to some really interesting emerging trends, things that are actively reshaping the industry's future right now. What should we be watching?
Well, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, the whole idea of the metaverse and the growth of social gaming is, well, it's transformative. You look at platforms like Fortnite or Roblox. They started as games, sure, but now they're evolving into these like immersive social hubs.
Social hubs.
Yeah, places where millions of people hang out, attend virtual concerts, go to virtual events, interact with brands. It's way beyond just playing a game. It's really blurring the lines between gaming, social media, entertainment, even commerce. It's a whole new level of digital engagement.
That really does sound like it's changing the fundamental way we interact online, not just in games. Okay, and you mentioned cloud gaming earlier. How's that playing out? Is it really taking off?
It's definitely gaining serious traction. Services like NVIDIA GeForce Now Doobie, Xbox Cloud Gaming,
Yeah.
they're becoming more popular. And the key benefit, the real draw, is that it lowers the barrier to entry. You don't necessarily need super expensive high-end hardware anymore.
Ah, so you can play top games on like a cheap laptop or even your phone?
Exactly. Or a smart TV. It dramatically opens up access to potentially millions, maybe billions, of people who couldn't afford a dedicated gaming PC or console before. That could be a massive game changer for reaching new audiences globally.
Okay, and one last emerging trend that sounds almost like science fiction, but the report says it's here. AI-generated content. What's that about?
Yeah, this one raises some interesting questions about, efficiency, but also creativity in making games. AI-generated content is starting to revolutionize how quickly and efficiently games can be developed. It's not just about code. We're talking about AI creating more dynamic, believable behaviors for NPCs like we mentioned, but also automating the creation of game assets, think environments, buildings, maybe even character models.
So making games faster and cheaper.
Potentially, yes, but also enabling new kinds of experiences. Imagine AI helping to create personalized storylines, worlds that genuinely react and adapt to your specific choices in the game. That could lead to incredibly unique, tailored experiences for every single player.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about what's happening inside the industry, the players, the tech, the business models, the trends. But the Cognitive Market Research Report also highlights a really powerful external force: geopolitical shifts, specifically changes in trade policy. This sounds like it could cause massive waves.
Oh, absolutely. What's really striking here is how directly and sometimes quickly trade policy impacts the electronics sector, and therefore gaming hardware. The report uses the example of the Trump administration's proposed 2025 Liberation Day tariffs. These aren't small adjustments.
Right, what do they involve?
We're talking potential duties up to 145% on certain Chinese electronics.
Yeah.
And maybe 25% tariffs on really critical components, semiconductors, lithium-ion batteries, lots of other consumer electronics parts that go into consoles and PCs.
145%, that's huge. That can't just be absorbed.
Exactly. A tariff that high doesn't just mean slightly higher prices. It can fundamentally redraw manufacturing maps for years, even decades.
Okay, so breaking that down, what's the bottom line impact for the gaming industry itself, and maybe more importantly for us, the people buying the games and hardware?
Well, the immediate effect is a major disruption to those super efficient, just-in-time supply chains that the electronics industry relies on.
The ones designed to keep costs low, but maybe aren't very flexible.
Precisely. They're hyper-efficient in stable times, but as we're seeing, they're very vulnerable to global shocks like these tariffs. This disruption directly leads to higher manufacturing costs for consoles, for VR headsets, controllers, accessories, you name it. And ultimately, those increased costs tend to get passed on, which means higher retail prices for you, the consumer. Your next console, your next graphics card, your VR gear, it might cost significantly more because of this.
So, faced with these kinds of massive potential cost increases and supply chain chaos, how are the manufacturers reacting? What are the big companies doing to adapt?
They're actively trying to diversify where they source components and assemble products. You see moves towards countries like India, Mexico, Vietnam, trying to reduce reliance on China.
But is it easy to just switch production like that?
Not at all. It's a huge challenge. They often face real limitations in these other countries, maybe not enough factory capacity or difficulty getting the specific specialized subcomponents they need locally. It really underscores just how incredibly complex these global supply chains are and how difficult it is to suddenly rebuild them or make them more resilient.
It sounds like an incredibly volatile and uncertain environment for these companies. So, where does something like market research fit into all this? How does it help navigate this mess?
Yeah, it really begs the question, right? How do you make smart strategic decisions when the ground is shifting under your feet like this? And this is where market research comes absolutely pivotal.
Right.
It's not just nice to have, it's essential. Good research allows companies to properly assess potential alternative suppliers in different countries. It helps them forecast how costs might change because of tariffs or disruptions, and ultimately, it informs the strategies they need to build more resilient, more adaptable supply chains that are less vulnerable to these geopolitical shocks.
Yeah.
It's moved beyond just understanding consumer tastes. It's now fundamental for strategic planning and, frankly, survival.
So, putting it all together, what's the big takeaway here? It sounds like the video game market is this incredible mix of amazing technological leaps, broadening audiences, but also tightening regulations, and now these huge geopolitical pressures.
Yeah,
It's a really complex ecosystem, isn't it? And it seems like making decisions based on solid research and data isn't just helpful anymore. It's absolutely critical if businesses want to navigate all this and actually thrive.
absolutely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, you see these lines just blurring faster than ever between gaming, social interaction, entertainment, maybe even work eventually.
Yeah.
The industry is constantly reinventing itself, not just in the games themselves, but in how we experience these digital worlds and interact within them.
Okay, so let's leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. Something provocative, maybe. With this rise of the metaverse as a genuine social space, and with AI getting better and better at creating personalized content, how might your own daily life, your interactions online, how might they change in the next few years? Will you be attending work meetings or concerts inside a game world? Will your next favorite story or adventure be generated by an AI completely unique just for you? Definitely something to think about as all these trends keep accelerating.